Hello, everyone. How are you doing? Today, we have with us Justin Knott, CEO, Intrepy Healthcare Marketing. Hey, Justin,
Hey,
how are
everybody.
you?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me on today.
Well, thank you for your time. It has been hard to, get hold of you.
Yeah, it's been crazy times right now, so I appreciate you being diligent and getting me on. I'm excited about today.
Well, we appreciate you being here. So, Justin, before we start discussing about, marketing and, like healthcare, it would be great if you could introduce yourself and your company for our viewers.
Yeah, absolutely. So we are a full service marketing agency. I'm the president and CEO, as you mentioned. We're closing in on 10 years in business. Really, since day one, our bread and butter has been helping medical and healthcare organizations develop their online voice, improve the art of storytelling, and develop what we call patient-centric healthcare, patient-centric marketing programs. So that's been really our niche. We've worked with probably almost 50 different specialties at this point. And we have kind of two sides of the business that I think make us unique is the digital side, which is really my focus, SEO, SEM, website development. And then my business partner, who's my wife, is one of the kind of the leaders in the physician liaison development space, which is kind of going out and building new referrals. So we kind of address both sides of the coin, what we call online and offline marketing for physicians and their healthcare practices to help them grow.
Right. So, I mean, why healthcare? Was it because your wife was also in that sector and you thought of kind of combining it, or?
I can't say that I set out at least like before even, well, I mean, I didn't even know I was going to start an agency almost 10 years ago, but we always had a strong interest, but it really does, as far as the focus came from her side. So she actually worked out of college with one of the largest ear, nose, and throat practices as their director of marketing in the Southeastern United States. And so, and her family is just got a slew of people in the healthcare industry. Her grandfather went through the first orthopedic fellowship offered in the United States after World War II. So
Oh,
she's just got a long background in healthcare. So it's just kind of a natural progression when we sat down and we looked at where we should take the agency. She already had a network developed. We felt like healthcare, as we even see now with all the COVID stuff, is very stable. There's obviously a good bit of money there from a marketing standpoint, but we were very early on. Now there's hundreds, if not tens of thousands of healthcare marketing focused agencies across the world. And we were very early on. There was maybe only a couple dozen of us in the US when we got started. So we were definitely early on in the niches, which I'm thankful now because I've seen a lot of agencies and obviously a lot of sectors get hit really hard during the COVID. So it was definitely a personal decision. And then as we began to scale, we learned that the riches are in the niches. It makes it a lot easier to scale and replicate when you're really just focused on one thing and one thing only.
well, that's the reason I asked this question because, I mean, like having a niche to focus on, it has a lot of benefits agency wise also, right?
Sure.
I mean, you're
Yep.
focused, it's easier when you scale, it's easier to maintain your costs. So I just wanted to kind of understand, how you went about choosing the niche.
And healthcare is really unique. I mean, every vertical is unique just because we focus in healthcare, getting into auto dealerships and driving leads that way, because it's all about figuring out the end user and what that workflow needs to look like and everything. So everyone's unique. Healthcare has a lot of nuances because of the requirements of HIPAA and EMRs and patient PHI information, all of that kind of stuff, and the life of a doctor. Doctors have a different type of lifestyle. Lawyers are probably the closest that I've run into. So it's just kind of balancing what their lifestyles are like and getting in front of them. Surgeons, the flow of patient information, all of that kind of stuff. So once we learned it, we felt like it gave us a huge expertise leg up because I can have a conversation with a doctor that's 10 times more sophisticated than most other marketing agencies can. But same thing goes for them if they focus in e-commerce. That's not my area of focus and hasn't been historically.
Right, right. So, Justin, how have you seen, SEO for healthcare change, or what do you see as the latest trends in
Yeah, so
SEO
there's
healthcare?
been there's been a lot of shifts. Again, what makes I think healthcare very unique is you have two layers in the SEO area, and everything is very hyper local focused. You will have some regional and some national, but 99% of the time, if you're dealing even in the hospital sector or the private practice sector, unless you're an MD Anderson or something like that, that's nationally renowned and people are willing to travel, most of the time, nobody really cares about the 20 outside of the 25-mile radius around their practice, because it's really the threshold of patients who are willing to travel. So you're really hyper focused on how do I beat my competitors in a very, very, very local market. And I think the biggest shift we've seen is in healthcare, you have two sides: people searching for the provider or people searching for the condition treatment level. So you have to focus on both. So on from a provider standpoint, you've got providers are one of really, outside of lawyers, that can have Google My Businesses. They have health grades, they have vitals. So they have this whole ecosystem of listings that you really need to be worried about that you typically don't have to for like founders of companies and stuff that you're dealing with.
Right.
And then on the other side, you're also wanting to rank for, say it's a women's health facility like OBGYN. You're wanting to rank for all of those treatment or condition line services that they offer too. So there's a very dynamic flow that happens. And we've seen through that, as Google has become more and more localized, reviews taking prominence to the bane of a lot of physicians. But it just, the fact remains, I think we were talking on a podcast the other day, I think patients on the patient side have become very consumerized. They search for providers similar to like they search Amazon. It's
Right.
kind of a natural progression. They go find somebody who has an expertise in this area, which is why you want to run search. But once you're presented there and you win search, you've got to have a solid reputation, because something
Exactly.
like 85% of patients read reviews before they book an appointment. So you're now having to worry about, how do I rank in local? And then once I do start ranking, how do I make sure that my reputation is pristine? So I think that's been the biggest shift, is the consumerization of healthcare, which is dangerous on the provider side, because you're really presenting providers based on reputation and not based on skill set and patient outcomes and those kind of things. But that's the reality of the situation. So it's really become localization, physicians listings, and reputation is what we've seen as the biggest trends.
Right, right. So when you get a new client on board, how, how does your process look like? I mean, how do you plan budget across
Yeah.
platforms like SEO versus paid?
Yeah, that's a really great question. So what we typically, when we engage with a client, I'm a big believer in data. Let the data speak for itself. So we always start with very in-depth analysis, keyword analysis, patient search intent analysis, obviously historical data from working inside of that industry, what matters the most. Competitive analysis, I'm a big believer in. Why go out and reinvent the wheel if you've got competitors that are already doing this well, whether it's in your market or in another market? Go look at what that OBGYN is ranking for, what is driving their most traffic, what are patients finding them for the most, and put a strategy together that's better defined than theirs, that's got better content, that's better structured, contains more LSI keywords, and contains more siloed content around it. So we always start there. That's where kind of the basis of our planning occurs. And then as we move into it, depending on what they have historically and what's been performing well, we usually weight advertising more in the front end while we're developing their SEO foundational components in the back end, with an ultimate goal to kind of shift the scales as our organic growth begins to grow and we're getting more and more traffic ranking for more and more keywords, that we're starting to shift more and more of the focus over there. But as you know, paid ads are something, they're definitely not overnight. You can start showing up tomorrow for paid ads, but it usually takes months to gather the proper data and get the proper funnel optimization and know what to crank up and what to crank down. But you can get to lead generation faster than you can start ranking number one for all of these various treatments or service lines that your practice is offering. So that's how we like to approach it: is starting baseline audits, getting the strategy put in place, and the future content development. Focus on SEM while we're developing SEO in the background.
Right. When you do this, you said a very valid point, just see what's out there. So
Yep.
if I have to, let's say, analyze the content of my client, I would go and see the competition and see, what they're using, what's ranking for them. How do you plan the content outline? I mean, because you said that, you would also see, let's say, a person ranking in, let's say, Atlanta,
Yep.
something which is working well in LA, and use it in Atlanta. I mean, does it like actually work that ways also? Because since it's a localized business, maybe the culture or the way the content is used in another location might vary? I mean, how have you seen that in
Yeah,
healthcare?
it can definitely vary, but when we do audits, and it's a picture that I like to paint every time that we have a potential client that's walking into a situation, is it doesn't take a lot of searching, no matter what vertical that you're in, to pull down an SEM rush or Hrefs, whatever it is, to pull down a report of your competitor and prove the value that content creates for your site. Because I believe a healthy website with a healthy content strategy, 40, 50, even 60% of their organic site traffic visibility can be generated from their blog. And I think it's hard for people to understand that. Like, why do I need a blog? Why do I need to be creating content consistently? And then they see those numbers. Well, your competitor is ranking for 10 times the number of keywords and driving 10 times the amount of traffic. And it's because of these 10 blog posts that are right here. And so
Right.
that's a good visual. But most of the time, there, again, going back from a healthcare standpoint, there's two sides: is localized ranking and national ranking. Both can be very up for grabs. I think the great thing is, in nowadays search environment, that you can take on the Goliaths in your space and rank really well for national keyword terms if you know what you're doing. Like, we have a women's health facility that offers a specific type of laser rejuvenation. And in a matter of weeks, we're now ranking in the number 2 slot, only being beat out by the manufacturer of that laser for generalized searches regarding it, which drive a ton of traffic. But if we append the title tag and some of the content with localization, like Marietta or Atlanta, their city focuses, not only can it help them rank nationally, but it can really narrow in the focus on a localized level search too, which is ultimately what matters the most. So I think you can take, the beauty is like you mentioned, if we have somebody in LA that's got a really solid piece of content that's performing well, we can take a lot of that strategy and produce it in an Atlanta market and make sure that we're really focused on the things that matter to the Atlanta market when it comes to geographical search, and rank really well in the Atlanta market for what they're doing really well in the LA market. So it's really, it's a powerful, and we've seen it work really, really well over the years.
Right, right. Well, I agree. I mean, we follow something similar when we compare content. So, I mean, like you said, now it's the same things we have learned long time back. The
Yep.
LSI, the content, but now
Yep.
you have tools who show it to you, and now you're
Exactly.
actually
Yep.
following it. So I totally
Yep.
agree. It does work. It does work.
It does. And the it really, I think what people are learning is, as Google's algorithm has shifted, what's really happening in the shift is they're focused on purity of search. So there's very little, they're hoping long term there's very little you can do to scam the system. You can't go link farm. You can't, like the link building has to be real and authentic from real websites with high domain authority that are on topic. And the more you do it the old fashioned way, the more you write really solid content that's really, really focused. You do proper interlinking, you go out and build proper backlinks. It's a longer process, but ultimately it gives you, I mean, it really gives you elbow room in a space that should be a long time there to stay. No matter what Google's algorithm does, it's your landscape that you've carved out, and then all you have to do is protect it.
Right. Talking about updates, what are your thoughts on the latest one which just came?
I got an email. Actually, I subscribed to Neil Patel's list. I haven't even gotten a chance. I would need to know from you. I saw that email come in and haven't even been able to wade through the latest update. So yeah, I'm not the I don't know yet. I will know today or tomorrow, but I did see it
Yeah.
come in with a new algorithm update, and but I haven't explored it yet.
Yeah, we're still following following it to see what actually it is about, but it looks like it's more about links this time.
Interesting.
Yeah, it's but
Which that's been a really, really, I think, clear pathway to success. I think for a while it was a shotgun approach, but I think people are realizing that it's very tactical now. If you've got a good piece of content, you go out and find a couple really strong backlinks, that's the authority route that Google is really wanting to go, because it's really kind of like reviews. It's having other people do the verification work for them. Is when you're
yeah.
building backlinks, you're kind of getting that verification just like reviews do. So I'm not surprised by that at all. I've heard word on the street is that they're starting to loosen up and re-release all of the review stuff that they shut down in COVID. So that'll be interesting to see. I think in May that'll come back around. So that'll be interesting to see.
Yeah, that will be interesting. And anyways, I mean, I think you are the best person to, answer this after the EAT and the medic update, right? I mean, the focus has been so much about quality of content, the
Yep.
authority, the genuineness of the links.
Yep.
So I think, going forward, I mean, like you said, it's very funny that recently, like last month, we came across a new client who came on board, and we were just doing an analysis. We did his backlink analysis, and I could not see like 95% of the links which were there. I mean, they were link farms, and I was like,
Yep.
I just called him personally, and I like had a discussion with him. And I said, like, who did this? He said that, hey, I have somebody in my team, and
We're going to need to disavow all of these. So,
and just FYI, I'm not taking the name, but he got hit in this update.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. And it's just a matter of time. If you don't do it the right way, like to me, and we lay it out all the time in our videos, really good search strategy. There's nuances to it. I liken it a lot to a credit score. There's 3 to 5 things that you can do to really get your credit score to like a 750. And then there's those incremental technical components that get you to that 800 level. But if you want to have a really, really solid SEO strategy, it's pretty simple overall. I mean, it's write really killer content, get your content out there and get people driving to your website, listen to what search intent is saying, and build authority backlinks so you have a higher level of trust score with Google. Like
Right.
there's not a lot of components to it overall, but it just trips so many people up because I think they don't want to go the long-term approach route. That's what it really does take. But if you do it the right way, and I mean, we put our money where our mouth is with our website and the process that we go through. And I see the times that we're really, really in tune with our process and what's going on. And we'll see 2, 3, 4, 5x multiples of growth on our website from a traffic standpoint. And then once you have that, all you got to do is focus on, all right, I got the users in my site. Now, how do I convert them? How do I keep them in there? How do I keep on page time up? How do I keep bounce rates low? And how do I convert the traffic that we've got?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's not rocket science. I mean, you just
No,
have
it's
to,
not.
yeah, you just have to, follow the approach and,
Yep.
analyze the data. I mean, at the end
Yep.
of the day, it's as simple as that.
Exactly. And if you look historically, even overall, the algorithm updates over the last couple of years, if you go back to kind of the purity of what SEO is, it's just become more and more and more refined. But if you look historically over the last 2 to 3 years, there hasn't been really a huge shift. It's just been focusing on, we want more legitimate, trusted content, and how we're gonna make you guys do that is go build authority backlinks that are not spammy, that are very relevant, and continue to write better and better and better content. Not necessarily longer content, but really, really on point content that really, really answers the user's query, because that's what Google's in the search experience game. They want to make sure that they get it right every single time. So they want really tight, really well structured, really focused content.
Right, right. Also, in healthcare, sometimes a third party factor, might influence conversions. Like, I mean, healthcare insurers, right,
Yep.
often
Oh yeah.
dictate where a customer can
Oh
receive
yeah.
treatment.
A lot of
So
times.
how
Mhm.
how do you plan those situations in your strategy?
It can be difficult. I mean, they do have a lot of weight. What we've seen over the years, whether it's building physician referrals, we've seen it a lot in that space of the monopolization of a lot of large metropolitan and geographical areas by hospital systems, where they're really closing off their referral networks. And so essentially, if you're not owned by the hospital or on staff at the hospital, you're not going to get any referrals from anybody at the hospital. And so it can be a difficult game to play. Same when it goes for health insurers. But what we say is that's even more of a reason why you need to be building your own area of engagement that's yours. Because what if this health insurer closes with something like an event like COVID? Or what if these hospital systems go through some type of deregulation or change up in what they're allowed to do or not do? You just don't want to rely on that. We had John Wall, who hosts the podcast Marketing Over Coffee, and that's one big thing that he believes in, whether you're in healthcare or not, is building out your own forums and your own your own engagement area, your own email list, all of that kind of stuff, because then it's yours forever. Like all those businesses, when Facebook's IPO occurred and they shut down their organic reach, got closed overnight. And so I think it's really important to not rely on health insurance, because there's so many what ifs, because a lot of internal medicine or specialty physicians, they get with Blue Cross Blue Shield of Georgia, they open their doors and they just have an influx of in-network patients that come in. But what if that goes away? Then what do you do? And it's the same thing with COVID. Like when everybody had to close their doors and switch to telemedicine and start serving patients online, everyone that hadn't built an engaged audience, it was crickets. I mean, they're like, what are we going to do? Like we don't have people referring to us. They can't refer to us. We don't have our doors open. Now, how do we go reach an audience that we've never bothered building, engaging, acquiring their information, providing value, doing anything for them? And all of a sudden we want them to listen.
Right, right. I mean, I understand right now telemedicine is hot, but like from your experience, how do you see its future after COVID? I mean, like in healthcare, you actually want to meet people, face to face, but how do you see its future
I think
afterwards?
To a lot of us in the healthcare marketing space, it was a I told you so moment. Like we've been telling you to get adept with technology and leverage technology, because you can use mid-levels, you can do post-operative visits, you can do encounter visits. Like there's so many ways. For so many years people have been able to leverage telemedicine, and all of the now that they're forced to, they're like, oh, this is kind of nice. We can like limit the amount of people in our office, do more high revenue stuff in the office, and do all of our encounter and post-op follow-ups for telemedicine. So to us, we've been kind of preaching it for years. And now that it's happened, I think it's definitely here to stay. I just think it's going to become a normal part of the workflow. As you said, there's components of healthcare that inherently can never be done anywhere but in person, especially on the surgical side. But I think leveraging technology to your benefit for initial evals, encounter visits, post-operative follow-ups will make practices more agile, more adept, more profitable long-term. So I think it'll be here to stay. It's just going to be interesting to see who does it better, who can onboard patients quicker, who can triage patients faster, who can get them into workflows better, like who can make the patient experience through the telemedicine side of things as seamless as possible, because it's kind of a consumer experience. Can I download something really quick? Can I see them really quick? Can I get my follow-ups really quick? So I think it's not going to go anywhere, but I do think it's going to separate the good from the great of who is going to offer and leverage the technology the best.
Right, right. You also co-host a podcast with your wife, Kelly.
Yeah.
How has that experience been?
It's been really good. It's been a lot of fun. We started it really October. I'd say we got really serious kind of come 2020. But it's been a lot of fun. It's been, especially in recent months, we've gotten a lot of larger names both in and out of the healthcare space, which has really helped open doors. So that's been a really fun opportunity to interview industry thought leaders that really carry a lot of weight in the space. And because we're healthcare focused, get a perception that you don't hear them talk a lot about, specifically in the healthcare space. So I've really, really enjoyed it. I think it's made me a better marketer. It's gotten me more adept at different types of content, because we're really video focused. So how do we take something non-visual, like an audio based podcast, and slice it up and take advantage of video and audio and blog post form? And so it's been fun. We've really, really enjoyed it. And we've been very fortunate. We've been continue to grow every single month. The good thing is we have a captive audience right now, because we have more health practitioners than ever sitting at home that need something to do. So that's been good. So hopefully we can continue that path and trajectory in the coming months.
Right, right. But aggregators normally rank higher, versus individual players. How do you go about choosing the topics for your podcast?
That's a good question. I think it's really listening. It's the same thing that we tell our providers who are going to go into a content strategy and they struggle with coming up with content. It's like, well, you see 30 patients a day, times that by 5 days a week over a month. It's like you probably get asked like 1,000 questions a month. Just jot those down. Same thing happens as our reach has grown and our engagement has grown on social media. I think it's made it honestly easier for us to come up with topical, because we can look into search data, where are their holes, what are people looking for and not finding us about. Or on LinkedIn, when we do video topic based stuff, we get a lot of comment engagement and we just listen. And those are usually the topics that we pick. Is we've got providers literally asking us these questions, either guests that come on our podcast and ask us during an interview, or what people ask us on LinkedIn. And that's been really the big driver. I think podcasts are unique. They do rank well with SEO. I think that they have a ways to go to really, if you're like trying to use a podcast to grow organic search, I think you may want to go about your what you want out of your podcast a little bit differently. So we've really taken that approach. Is we've got blogs that really grow organic SEO. We've got video on YouTube for that type of search, and podcasts are pure meat, I think, because you've got 30 to 45 minutes, which I don't do videos that long, to cover a topic really, really in depth. But I didn't go into it in the frame of mind of thinking like this is going to 10x my organic search traffic. What it's going to allow me to do is open doors with interviewers that I never would have been able to get in front of. And it's going to allow me to reach an audience that I have not been able to get in front of, to who want to listen to audio.
Right. When you started off, I mean, how did you plan the frequency? I mean, how many podcasts, how often? Was there a strategy, or you just...
Yeah, I think early on it was we tried to backlog so we could get into a good cadence. We wanted to, when I set out, I knew I wanted to work to get to at least one episode a week. So we had a rhythmic frequency so people knew what to expect. And then as we started to ramp, we found that guest interviews get a different feedback than when it's just Kelly and I talking about marketing. And it's not good or bad. Some guest interviews do better than others. And obviously it's topical dependent as well. So we found that we don't want to do a run of like 8 guest episodes in a row. We want to make sure that we're giving people a variety. So we're talking about different topics with different people, but we're sprinkling in just the two of us talking as well, because that seems to, if we do too many guest podcasts in a row, just from our experience, our list per episode downloads can taper off a little bit. So that's been something that we found from the data over time, is we need to kind of alternate as we move along.
Right, right. Well, I mean, I know you have, less time and you have got to go. So, instead of, like asking you more marketing related questions, I'll just like to ask a couple of questions in the end, which
Yeah,
might benefit our agency owners. Like,
yeah.
as an agency, what has worked best for you as far as lead generation is concerned?
I think it has been our investment into LinkedIn. I think that's been the biggest. We're reaching, I think, a market that's typically a little bit hard. I think every agency owner would defend and say, like, my market's harder to reach than anybody else, kind of thing. But when you have doctors that historically have not been that accurate or not that active on social media, it's been finding unique ways to either reach the older demographic that's never going to adapt to social, or the younger demographic that are not the decision makers that yet, but they are active on social. And I think we, in August of last year, really decided to make a concerted effort to grow our LinkedIn reach. As a result, my business partner is a LinkedIn influencer. She got approved for LinkedIn Live Beta. She reaches tens of thousands of profile views every single week. She'll be close to the 30,000 connection mark over the next month or two. And with that has come a large source of lead flow, as well as thought leadership. I mean, we now have developed a whole area of our business that's just predicated on social selling and LinkedIn consulting. People are like, what are you guys doing? How do you do it? Can you please tell me more? So I think that's been the biggest thing. We have, I'd say, arguably one of the larger organic reaches in our space online, but I still believe it still goes back to how many doctors are going out and like seeking like online search for their solution from a marketing standpoint. And so direct engagement by securing our space as a thought leader on LinkedIn has been massively important. It makes the sales cycle a lot easier because they trust us already, because they've listened to our podcast, they've watched our videos, they've engaged with our posts. So they get it, they know, and then they know that we get it. So that's been the biggest, I'd say, of almost 10 years in business and trying digital advertising, downloadables, all the different stuff. I think over the last year, we've really hit our stride by focusing on LinkedIn for who our end user is and who our ideal client is. So that's been the biggest source, I think, for us of growth.
And even for LinkedIn, you say the best way is to try to make yourself a thought leader and then,
Yep.
Take it from there.
Exactly. And we've been fortunate enough that if you compare 6-7 years ago when we started the agency, the doctors are a lot more savvy. They know enough to know that they need help. That was not the case before, where you were like trying to convince people like you should be marketing. And you're like, why? I'm booked out for 3 months. And now you've got younger orthopedic surgeons and ENTs that are coming out of residency and they're 32, 33, 34. They've grown up in this digital marketing age and they want to do things different in their practice. So they're taking Udemy courses, they're doing their own reading online, they're consuming their podcasts like ours and learning how to better market their practice, which makes it easier for us because they already know kind of what they're looking for versus 7-8 years ago, you were just convincing them that they needed to start a Facebook. It's like now they already get it. They're like, well, how can I get tactically better adept at digital technology?
Makes sense. Well, Justin, thank you so much for your time.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me, man.
Yeah, it was not much, but I'll definitely get hold of you again and we'll talk more.
Yeah, absolutely. Love to come back on. Yeah, for sure.
All right. Take care, buddy.